That losing is worth
I think
getting
that's the way of
upset
putting
about.
it that I haven't been able to come up with. But yeah, losing is bad, and nobody gets mad. You see Nick Swisher every day. I heard him on the look. My girlfriend's mother watches 162 games a year. She's a crazy Yankees fan, and she freaks out. She texted me yesterday, like after they lost. She's like, "I want to cry and throw up. I can't handle this anymore." And I told her on September 1st, it's September 1st. We have a 3-game lead. If I said to you before the season, September 1st is going to roll around, would you sign on the dotted line for that? You would. A 3-game lead, but you thought Boston would be in second place. Right. You didn't think the Orioles would be on your heels and Tampa Bay would be right behind them. You thought it would be Boston and Tampa Bay, probably both right in there. But you'd sign up for the 3-game lead. But then I hear Nick Swisher say this after a game when they lost and got dropped down to that 3-game lead. And he goes, I'd sign up for that before the season. I don't want to hear that out of you. I want to hear that out of a fan because... Good, give me the 3-game lead. But Nick Swisher should say, I want a 15-game lead. I'm not... 3 games isn't good enough. We're going to win 112 games this year. That's the acceptance of the fact that you were up 10 games, now you're up 3, and you're okay with that because at the beginning of the season, you'd be happy to be in first place, isn't okay with me. You shouldn't be okay with what's happening. And nobody's flipping a table. Nobody's yelling in the clubhouse. As far as I can tell.
I think this is something that the world is realizing, both, like, not just you realizing it as a Yankee fan, but I was thinking about this when I went to see the Dark Knight Rises. Do you know what I'm talking about?
I would love to see where you're going with this.
Because it's where he climbs out of the cave, out of the jail, and in order to make the jump that it takes to climb out the shaft coming out of the jail,
no rope,
and he has to do it with no rope. And first he says, "I'm not afraid of dying," and then the witch doctor says to him, "Well, that's why you don't make it. You can't make it unless you have the fear of dying."
Yeah,
and it's sort of. It goes against everything you've ever seen in movies or inspirational stuff about sports of just believe in yourself, love yourself, all positive stuff. It's a little bit of anger and fear is actually a good thing.
Yeah, you gotta be angry pumping, right?
You gotta be angry about losing. You gotta be afraid of failing. You gotta let that push you forward.
Yeah, I get. You know what? That's a great connection. Maybe if I think I'm gonna fall to my death in a jail in the middle of a desert. My adrenaline might kick in and push me a little further on that jump.
You want to get that sense from the Yankees that they're afraid of dying, that they're just not, whatever.
They almost seem satisfied that they're beating the Red Sox and that's enough. Boston's irrelevant. We've done our job for another year. And you know what? I would have actually bought into that before 2004. I would have said any year the Red Sox don't win the World Series, whether or not the Yankees win, is an okay year with me, just to keep that streak going. But it's not the case anymore. Now we're not... You used to look at the Yankees as the Temple Guardians, and they were the last line of defense for the world to stop the Red Sox from winning the World Series. At least that's how I did. Maybe I'm a little too emotional about this. But it's over. They blew it. And now you're just like every other team, and so are they, and go out there and just win baseball games. All you have to do is win World Series, and that's your goal now. Stopping the Red Sox isn't enough. There's no second place. There's no consolation anymore saying, well... like in 2003, we didn't win, but you know what? The Red Sox didn't get to sweep the Marlins in 4 games. Right?
Yeah, that was exactly what I thought in 2003. That's why I was never upset about 2003 the way I was about some of those other years.
You were emotionally drained. I think we all were.
Yeah, it was hard to even be excited about that World Series at any point.
No, Mussina had a nice start, and I was excited because he was my favorite player during his Yankee years, and even before. I've been to Camden Yards once in my life, and this Saturday will actually be the second time I'm going to go watch the Yankees get the floor wiped with themselves by the Orioles. But I went one time before when I was in 6th grade. I got my parents to take me down just to see a Mike Mussina start, because I always liked him. And then when the Yankees signed him, that was nice, because I got to cheer for a guy that I had already liked. But besides that game, I think he got pitched back in game 2. There was nothing to be happy about in that series. You didn't care about Dontrelle Willis or a 19-year-old Miguel Cabrera, or I don't even know who was on that team. Who was the rest of that rotation? Carl Pavano, Ryan Dempster, was he in that team?
I think Dempster might have been hurt. Brad Penny was in that rotation, actually.
You're not scared of any of those guys. They all had decent...
Brad Penny...
AJ Burnett was on that team, right?
Yep.
They had a lot of decent like MLB players, guys that like have made it. No,
Brad Penny was a yearly member of my fantasy team for a while, but not the most exciting guy.
no, that's my Joel Pinheiro.
Before we move on from baseball, any comment on the Orioles? Like WTF? What?
I read the sabermetric stuff, and they'll say, "Oh, well, the run differential."
I actually have a theory about that.
I'd love to hear it.
My theory is that whenever teams overcome their run differential, it's because of their bullpen. Because when they lose, you can just pile on the runs and beat them 10-1. But if they get a 1-run lead late, that's it.
Does this team seem like they have a good bullpen now? Like
the Orioles?
I mean, Jim Johnson's been good. I didn't know too much about Jim Johnson coming into this year, but I know about Matt Lindstrom. I mean, that guy sucks. That guy's flamed out in Colorado, Houston, where else? Florida. That guy's terrible. He was like a mainstay in their bullpen all year. Pedro Stroop, you know how good that guy is? He got cut by the Rangers before this season, and he throws 100.
But
because he didn't have room on their 40-man roster. Are you kidding me? The guy's got options left. They couldn't find a place for Pedro Stroop throwing 100.
He's been great, though.
But relievers are volatile.
Maybe not even. Well, they're volatile, but if they can be good for 1 year, then you can overcome that run differential by the fact that when you get a 1-run lead, even if you just have 2 or 3 guys who can hold that 1-run lead every single time, that will make up for all the games that you lose 10-1. The games that you win 3-2 with that bullpen.
You know what? The last team to overcome their run differential and make the playoffs was the Arizona Diamondbacks a couple years ago. And who was in their bullpen? I don't know.
It was Valverde, and he had his best year ever.
Oh, he had like 49 saves, didn't he?
Again, Valverde, not good every year, but he was spectacular that year.
But who else was setting up for him? Brandon Lyon? I mean, a closer doesn't make you a good team. You can't win all these 1-run games just because you have a good closer unless you're pitching in 3 innings.
I'm trying to give you a reason, but if I'm right, it also means that from like a sabermetric, wins above replacement perspective, that closers are actually underrated if they're as important as I think for.
No, and I can see what you're saying because. I mean, this Orioles team, every time they lose, they do get their doors blown off. It's not close. They lose 10-4, like, twice a week, but then they win 3-2 the other 5 times. I don't know. They don't make any sense to me. I'm fine with losing to the Rays. At least I respect them, and the rotation's disgusting. But, I mean, who do we get outpitched by this weekend? Miguel Gonzalez? Is that his name? I had never heard of this guy until like 2 months ago, and I thought that Mike Gonzalez was a starting pitcher for the. I saw an M. Gonzalez in the paper, and I was like, "Oh, Mike Gonzalez got switched to a starter, and he's pitching for Baltimore." I was like, "That would be a nice fantasy pickup because that guy throws pretty hard."
So the first time I saw C. Pennington for Oakland, and thought that Chad Pennington had become their shortstop.
Exactly. I mean, maybe he probably has the arm for it. Or actually, you know what? What am I talking about? He should be at second base. Tossing it underhand.
Alright, I'm just testing it now to see.
I could be opposing.
Do that.
I could go towards the camera and